Today I'm going to be doing a review on my Prism Lyra 2. Now, I've been wanting to do a review on this interface for quite a while, but I didn't really know if I liked it or if I didn't. There was a lot of things I was figuring out with it, and now I feel like I have a really good grasp on it. I've had it for a year, and it's taken me a year to know if I liked it or not. So without further ado, I'm going to start with the I/O and the conversion on this interface, because that's probably what a lot of you are curious about. The conversion on the interface is good, but it actually isn't nearly as detailed or open or clean as some of the other more high-end interfaces usually are, or converters usually are. Comparing this to my RME ADI 2.4 and also comparing it to a Lynx Hilo, it definitely becomes clear that the Prism Lyra is very, very colored and also can be a tad dark if you're not upsampling over 96,000 kilohertz. Now, I think it could be a really great option for you if you're a producer or you're somebody who makes music, produces music, and doesn't necessarily just mix. But as far as mixing and mastering goes, I found that it was just a little bit too much color and character for my taste and my comfort. I also didn't find that the I/O was extensive enough considering the price that you're paying for this particular interface. The interface did get cheaper because Prism announced that they had a much more streamlined production process for their interfaces, but even still, 4 outputs and 2 inputs, analog along with 2 mic pre's, not the craziest setup in the world. That said, it still has a really pleasant sounding character to it if you are into colored sounding converters, and I do think that this converter in particular really shines into low end. It has a really lush, full sounding low end that, to me, maybe could work really well depending on the kind of stuff you do. If you're somebody who makes orchestral music or who works in live and classical sounds, I think it really, really would suit that really well. Just be sure that you're producing, recording, and mixing in above 96 kilohertz. Because I do find that the filter or the roll-off of the DA and AD filter in the Prism to be a little bit steeper compared to some other ones. I want to talk about some of the other features in this interface because I got to use every single one of them and figure out if they're good or not, or how I feel about them at least. And the first one I want to talk about in particular is actually the headphone amp. For some reason, I don't know what it is about the construction in it, but the headphone amp doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound really detailed. It doesn't sound really open. It's very, very hard to use it with any headphones that require a lot of output, a lot of power. My Audi's headphones in particular were not able to get a really honest or kind of natural sound out of the headphone amp that I could use to mix reliably. I found that if I did anything with those headphone amps, it just would not translate at all. And then when I compared that headphone amp to my RME ADI 2.4 and compared that as well to the RNHP headphone amp from Rupert Neve with the same interface, so on the Prism, I found that the headphone amp inside the Prism didn't even come close to the other headphone amps. So that's one thing I definitely think for the price you should be getting a better headphone amp in that device. Especially for us who use really high-end headphones for mixing and production. So that was a little bit disappointing, and as well as the headphone amp not necessarily working very well, for some reason the AES output on the back just doesn't work well either. So this device doesn't technically have just an AES 3 port, but it does have an RCA to AES port on the back, which I've never heard about before this interface. And I bought a cable from Mogami to be able to use that RCA to AES port to connect these speakers to my AES monitors behind me. While it was working for a while, enough that I was hearing sound and it seemed to be functioning, I realized that there was definitely something going on with the audio. There was something weird happening and I couldn't put a finger on it. So after long enough of getting kind of discouraged because sounds weren't really making sense, I switched over to AES with a different interface that I have, and it sounded tremendously better. So I don't know what that is. I tried using it. I tried swapping out the cable. I tried cleaning the cable, making sure that the inputs and outputs are clean as well. I did whatever I could, and I messed with the settings in there. It doesn't allow you to change any filtering or do anything tricky to the AES signal path. Not sure why it didn't sound right, but I wouldn't recommend using this if you have AES monitors and you need AES monitoring. That kind of sucked. But apart from that, the interface has a really good control app. The control app never crashed on me, was really smooth. It was obviously zero latency, and you get a pretty good amount of control for your routing on the inside of that app. And it sounds and looks pretty good. So that's always a plus. Now, would I recommend this interface to anybody who's looking to maybe particularly master or clip their converters? I do think that this can actually work if you're a mastering engineer and you want to clip a converter. I think this converter in particular can handle it. Some converters, or most digital converters, are not necessarily designed to be clipped, but This one does have the overkill. It does have that limiter as well in there, so you can push it and get a good sound out of it. And I do understand why mastering engineers would like the sound of the A to D conversion and the clipping of these converters. It does have a good character to it, but again, I would much, much, much rather spend money on a better DAC and then invest in a really good A to D converter that has character, if character is what you're looking for. Something that I definitely found with the Prism Lyra is that I kind of was guessing a lot. I didn't know if what I'd recorded was really good or not. I didn't know if my input, if there was something, I don't know, something that I could do better sometimes. And I think that was in part due to the character of the DAC and the character of the converter. But at the same time, I did find that when I was using the DAC and using this converter to produce, I definitely had an easy time picking sounds, doing things, and really enjoying the sound of the converter. I think this converter definitely paired up quite well with my ATCs when I had them. I think they gave the ATCs a really good sound. I do think that it's a little bit dark, this converter, compared to the more transparent and kind of open converters like the RME, which I probably would pick over the Prism overall as a converter. But Prism Lyra did a pretty good job with this interface overall, and it's not completely out of most people's budgets if they're looking for a high-end converter. That said, I want to talk about something really important that happened to me with Prism. This is actually the second Prism interface that I bought. I bought a Prism Titan, and the Prism Titan died on me the first day that I got it. And I sent it back in. It wasn't a battery thing or power supply thing. Rather, not battery. It wasn't a power supply issue. It was just something wrong with the unit, and they couldn't figure out why it was doing that either when I sent it back to Studio Economic. And so at the time, the Prism Titans were completely back-ordered and unavailable everywhere. And so I wasn't able to get a Prism Titan for months. But somehow, by whatever luck, they were able to send me the Prism Titan that I had working again. They plugged it in and it just powered on, and so they sent it back and it worked again for 20 days until it just shut down again, and then it wouldn't work after that. So definitely a little bit annoying on that front, and I had to send it back in and wait. And the customer service at Prism, when I finally got through to somebody, because it took me a while to, when I got through to Frank over at Prism, thank you very much, Frank, for your service. It really, really helped me out. It was really, really patient with me about it, and tried his best to facilitate getting me a new device as soon as possible. That said, it just wasn't necessarily feasible for them to get me a new Prism Titan in a timely fashion, and so I ended up opting for their Prism Lyra because Studio Economic had it in stock. And that's what brought me to the Prism Lyra. Around the same time that I bought my Prism Lyra, my business partner purchased his to be able to try it out as well and see if he liked it. He liked what I was doing, so he thought he might give it a try, and the same thing happened to his device. He had to replace some parts in it. So it's something to definitely look out for. I don't know that this is still happening to people. I'm sure they probably did R&D and figured out what was happening. But when they made that announcement that they're speeding up the process of making their devices and it's going to be cheaper now for them to be able to sell the same quality, that's always just a little bit of a red flag, especially when the discrepancy in price is that big, over $1,000 for an interface like this. With that said, I would definitely tread lightly buying a Prism. My Prism Lyra works perfectly fine, has worked perfectly fine since I got it, but I can't help but worry sometimes that something might happen. It feels really, really solid. It's built really, really solid. The components and parts are really, really good. All the digital stuff seems to be functioning okay, but again, the AES thing that I was encountering on my device, I don't know if that's just my device, if that's everyone's device. I obviously I would have checked in with my buddy who bought his Prism, but he was having too many troubles with his, so he ended up returning it. And just a little curious what the deal is with Prism on the quality control end of things, because there's no reason it shouldn't work RCA to AES, but hey, who knows? Either way, at the end of the day, I don't think I would necessarily recommend this interface to you if you're looking for an interface in this price range. I would probably gear you more towards something else. Hopefully, this was a good review for you guys if you're curious about the Prism Lyra. I think it's very specific. I think it can work depending on what kind of work you do, but I think you just need to be a little bit careful and maybe keep your mind open to other options on the market before you stick to this one. Thanks so much for watching this review. I hope it helped out, and I look forward to seeing you guys again soon with some more content. Take care. Ciao.